well, you know, if you look at Roblox, we can tell it's going to be a $20 trillion opportunity. Or it's, God, I found this amazing opportunity on Solana. It's got 1,000x. It's called Rabbit Warrens. You're going to buy like a warren, and then like you can build land on it, and then like you can build your own warren and have other warrens and have sex with bunnies and stuff. And yeah, I think that's definitely the next.
And the
hot
YouTube
project
thumbnail, the man's mouth is open and it says 1,000x across his forehead. Hello everyone, GM. Welcome back to another episode of Overpriced JPEGs. I am stoked about today's episode because we are joined by the one and only SuperMassive. Do I say your... Yeah, I've upgraded the studio, but I have yet to, introduce sound effects.
I actually had it ready to go. It's like one of these buttons. I could turn myself into a robot. I could do the... It's so good. It never gets old, that one. But yes, I'm here.
You don't even need the sound effects. Your mouth, you're able to beatbox.
It just comes out of me. Yes,
yeah,
indeed.
It comes out of you.
Well, GM to you, although it's more like GA now because it's like mid-afternoon here.
Well, you're Netherlands. You're
I'm in. Shh! Don't tell anyone. Yes.
Oh, do we actually bleep that, or you don't care?
No, we don't. It's Central Eastern Time, somewhere in Europe.
No. So was that a bleep that, or you don't care?
No, don't. It's fine. I'm proud of where I live. In somewhere in the Netherlands.
Oh, okay. Well, you were shushing like it was some grand secret.
No, like that whole synonymous thing. Like nobody knows who you are. They can find out real fast if they want to.
Well, when you're yourself on camera, there's just no way to avoid it. So
this is a big target on my back. Actually, no. Living where I am, it's great because nobody recognizes me. Nobody has a clue who I am. It's great.
Yeah.
Really
and then you go to a crypto conference and it's like, it's a little different here.
I know, but you had that too, right? At NFT NYC. You just walk around and everyone just goes, like, are you going to say something or not? Because then we can get past this awkward bit. And then like,
funny moment.
And then it's like, okay.
My favorite is I will often have people recognize me by my voice. Even more than my face. Like I went into an elevator one time and was like, like floor 10. I was at a conference in, I forget where, maybe it was Texas. And that was when the person was like, are you Carly Riley? And I was like, oh, like they didn't, because they only listen.
They call that they call that sonic branding. Carly Riley's mellifluous turns are well suited to yogurt commercials.
We will get to this episode in very short order. I know people don't love preamble, but I will say, you want to talk about sonic branding, I feel like you have the voice that's so distinct, and like I feel like you have a very good sonic brand.
That's what we should be doing then. We should just take the face away and leave the voice. I'll just reduce myself down to waveforms.
SuperMassive and I are now both in the business of ASMR.
That's it. Oh my God. Can you imagine? Can you imagine how much money we would make? Just going... God, it's so creepy. So weird.
I'm so not a fan. Yeah. No. We won't stay here. We'll move on. But I will say we are going to talk about your next chapter. SuperMassive has left the Defiant.
I know.
Which was a defining part of many people's Web3 journeys, I would say. I saw your video about the Bored Ape Yacht Club, which honestly I would say probably still holds up if people went and watched it. But I watched this last year as I was still trying to really wrap my head around why are these apes such a big deal. And that was as somebody who was fairly bought into the premise of digital ownership even at that point, but you just put the Bored Ape thing in such clear focus and perspective, in my opinion. So just amazing content at the Defiant. This next chapter will be amazing as well. We're going to get into all that as well as just broad thoughts. You have some I think interesting thoughts on royalties. You've got an NFT drop coming up as part of this next chapter, and so you're thinking about royalties and the creator economy broadly. We'll get into all that, but we do first need to hear a word from our lovely, lovely sponsors.
When it comes to NFTs, convenience often wins over security, despite scams being everywhere. Brands and artists have no other choice by complying with big marketplace terms and weak security because no good alternative exists. Which is what prompted Ledger to fix the problems of NFTs themselves and launch Ledger Market. The Ledger Market provides an end-to-end secure NFT experience for brands, artists, and users, enabling true ownership and control over NFT assets, from minting to storing. Ledger Market secures NFT projects via Ledger Enterprise, keeping you protected from phishing attacks and scams. And the market directs users to Ledger Live, where they can transact with a contract directly, giving clear signing details instead of blind signing and praying. Don't trust, verify with clear signing from Ledger Market. Stay up to date on the latest drops and marketplace updates by following Ledger on Twitter and joining the Ledger Open Discord, which is linked in the show notes below. BUENO is the NFT toolkit you need to launch your digital collectible on the blockchain without coding. Every step of the NFT creation process, from generation to mint, all taken care of by the BUENO NFT toolkit. With BUENO, you can load up your art layers, reorder the layers, tinker with rarity, everything you need to make your NFT project a reality. BUENO even allows you to mint your tokens on the blockchain with zero code and offers advanced minting logic like linking allow lists, airdropping tokens, and on-chain royalty configuration. As a part of their launchpad, you'll get access to forums to run surveys, email collection, and build your pre-sale list to make sure you are hooked into your own community. BUENO is full of powerful tools you need to build the most expressive NFT project possible. So go to bueno.art and start building your own collections today.
Let me start with, what have you said publicly about your departure and what you're doing next from the Defiant?
So I think the first thing to say is I left the Defiant not out of any rank or anything else. It was more, I kind of had a feeling of where I wanted to go. And this was all the way like almost 18 months ago. And what I've been trying to do was figure out how to marry that with staying at the Defiant and continuing to do it there. And it just became increasingly clear that Cami and her brand was crystallizing towards this idea of being the most trusted source for DeFi. And where I'm leaning is more and more towards entertainment and having fun and building a mass audience, whereas Cami's audience is very much very hardcore niche, but really well served and really data driven. And I'm just not really a data driven kind of human. I like telling stories, and I like the stories of things that are happening and growing. So it's been this sort of slow process of trying to figure out what I wanted to do, which pieces of, the things that I like from Web3 made sense, and then raise some money to try and go ahead and do it. So over the last kind of 3 or 4 months, we've been raising VC funding. We can get into why that was a necessary step and why I didn't choose to go the non-VC route and raise primarily, for instance, with NFTs, which we could have done, but we didn't. And then, basically putting together this new brand, Based AF. Now, it was originally going to be called SuperMassive, but then we realized that there was a SuperMassive game development company, and so much of what we do will feel like it could have been made by them. It's just not worth the overlap. So we were looking for a word that would sort of feel punky and internet specific and be appropriate to tell the story of the metaverse, which is where we're landing. And that's how we came up with Based AF. So really, if you liked the fun, weird, funky stuff that we did at the Defiant, it'll be kind of more of that, but more targeted towards specific stories. And we're not doing education. And I think a lot of people would have expected that from us, expected me to be now, here's how you buy land in the metaverse, or here's how you use an Oculus. We're not doing that because, to be honest with you, the world has enough educators. There are enough people teaching you stuff. And that doesn't mean that you won't necessarily learn from us, but the thing that is really exciting for me is, what is the mass audience version of Web3? Like the Mr. Beast style version of Web3. And that doesn't necessarily mean we have to throw money everywhere, but it's how has he grown this huge business? How has he been able to retain audiences through an episode? And what are some ideas that we could tell in the metaverse space, which does link to Web3 and crypto, but doesn't necessarily always include it, that would capture people's imaginations in the same way? Because I've enjoyed working in a niche audience and being one of 1 or 2 players within it. But weirdly, the metaverse is even more of a niche, even though it's a broader category and it intersects with a lot more different technologies and interesting spaces. The metaverse specifically is a place that you call your home. There's almost nobody. And so the opportunity to be a first mover in that space, to be someone really telling those stories, was too irresistible to miss. Plus, it allows me to flex all the muscles that we have in terms of production value, in terms of telling really great stories, and then really designing stories that we can spend 2-3 months making, rather than, waking up in the morning, writing a script and then plunking it out in the afternoon. So we're moving very much from a quantity paradigm to a quality one, which is great.
Moving from a quantity education, quirky education paradigm to a quality mass consumer entertainment paradigm is what I hear.
Pretty much, yeah. And there is a couple of reasons we want to do that. And also, when I say from quantity, I don't mean that you'll be hearing from us once every 3 months. we will be doing social content and little bits and buzzy pieces. Every big film, these tent poles that we do, will have a couple of sidebars that peel off them that necessarily need their own bits of content, which could be YouTube Shorts. But we're gearing up to be very much a content production monster focused on the metaverse. So, I mean, in terms of tent poles and the kind of things, it's instead of saying, okay, here's the new Quest Pro headset and here's what it can do. It's like, well, what is the weirdest, wackiest thing we could do with a Quest Pro headset? Because that thing is mad. It's mad. And you're like, okay, here's the software we can use it, but what else can we do with it? And try and push that idea to the very limits of kind of human experience. People think of me as a storyteller in this space, but like most of the storytelling that we did, the script was written in like a day and a half. There was no re-editing of that script. And then we would shoot it and it would have to be published that same day we'd shot it. That's insane.
Yeah, that's insane.
And we were doing it because...
You think that was good, y'all? Wait until I can actually, make an edit or two on a script that I write in a film that I'm putting out.
Yeah, and it's also just recognizing the fact that YouTube is maturing in weird and wonderful ways. They've just announced they're monetizing shorts, which is really interesting because it will start to pull TikTok creators onto YouTube in ways that they weren't before. The paradigm, we've had this kind of Mr. Beast style kind of just massive, high budget, high concept stuff where people just like, I want a line and I'm going to throw $200 million at these people that they can catch the thing. And then like bang, you're into it. You're like, whoa, what just happened? Oh my God. And then like for 10 minutes, you're like this. Oh. And then it's over. That's insane, and it's not sustainable. Mr. Beast has gotten really good at that because he knows that that's how he keeps his audience. But we're starting to see more thoughtful, more storytelling-driven content being created. And that doesn't mean that it's boring. Like it's telling us, architecting a story and setting up payoffs and having kind of reversals, all this kind of stuff. It's good storytelling. And that's all we want to do. We just want to tell the most bonkers stories that we possibly can that take us all around the world, that make us kind of put us in really perilous situations, but bring that Web3 audience with us along the way, because that's where we come from. Those are our super fans. If we want to focus on like a core niche that is like has been fans, and that when we were walking along the street in New York, they looked you in the eye and then they did say something, it's like, it's for them. So yeah, it's really exciting. It's a lot of work. Oh God, yeah, it's crazy. But like back in the day in the Defiant, we were chunking out 6 videos a week. It was insane. It's completely insane.
You were doing 7 at one point, weren't you? It was like,
yeah, and a live stream. I mean, it was nuts. Like the sheer kind of pace of all of that got to a point where you just don't have any creativity left because just doing the creative idea is just so exhausting just to fit it in. So I needed a break from that, and this was my answer: just to make more content, and to take more risks. That was the answer. I love it, and we've talked about this, and obviously we've been in similar positions in some ways because I'm also like the more NFT metaverse like creative wing of Bankless, which talks about it a little bit, but is at its core much more a DeFi podcast. So you and I have sort of shared that experience. Just to make this really explicit for people, you sort of started to touch on it, I think, in all that you just said, but like you say no one is here when it comes to like metaverse content. And it's like, there's metaverse podcasts, there's covering the metaverse content. Yeah. Why is this really fundamentally different, what your vision is here? Well, that's a good question. So you're right, there are metaverse podcasts. There are some really, really good ones. There's one I've been following called The Next Billion Seconds with Mark Pesce and Tony Parisi. And those guys built the metaverse 30 years ago and no one was interested, and they ran out of money. And just to hear their version of that history and where we've come from, it's great. Really enjoyed it, but it's pretty niche. And then you have other podcasts where it's two very wise people going, well, if you look at Roblox, we can tell it's going to be a $20 trillion opportunity, and that's why you should be interested. There's a lot of that. Or it's, God, I found this amazing opportunity on Solana. It's got 1,000x. It's called Rabbit Warrens. You're going to buy like a warren, and then like you can build land on it, and then like you can build your own warren and have other warrens and have sex with bunnies and stuff. And yeah, I think that's definitely the
and
next
the
hot
YouTube
project
thumbnail, the man's mouth is open and it says 1,000x across his forehead. Yeah, he's pointing at his mouth.
Cringe, yeah, mega cringe, all that stuff. So that's tended to be what the metaverse, or it's like journalists is dunking on Mark Zuckerberg. Oh,
yeah,
the metaverse is so dumb. Horizon Worlds, look at the graphics on that shit, man. Come on, Mark Zuckerberg.
Who's ever going to want to put those things on their face? Yeah.
Yeah, right? So it's that. So where we're different is we're Team Zuck. We're not necessarily Team Facebook, but we are Team Zuck.
Wow, not where I thought we were going.
I'm saying it, but like the Zuck that does MMA, the Zuck that is like steadfastly believing in building a hardware product that is so niche, but is the pathway to another hardware product, to another one. Somebody had to build this stuff for us to understand the true potential of these things. And like when you see, he's just an awkward dude.
Sure.
And there's so much to unpack about Facebook and everything else. But fundamentally, I actually do believe he's kind of right about where he's going with what's right for Meta. You know, the open metaverse and all these other things necessarily should be a part of the conversation as well. But, you know, back in the day, there was an attempt by IBM to own the internet or own, you know, the way it was served up to you, and they failed. And we're going to hopefully see the same battle play out in the metaverse. And there's so much money being spent on the metaverse, but no one's really living it. And there are VTubers and some interesting creators, like, you know, putting themselves in digital characters and serving up information like that. But fundamentally, what we're going to do is we're going to do the Mr. Beast version of it, which is like to have fun with this stuff and not treat it like, oh, it's just this week's topic, but like live it, be in it, try stuff out, experiment, and be really the voice of that. Poke fun of it if we need to, but be a place where if you are interested in this and you want to be entertained by it and people trying to figure it out, then we would be your go-to source. And like I said, you know, every episode that we do, for instance, like, what is the weirdest place to jack into the metaverse from? There could be all these different sidebars on how we did it, what the limitations are. Like every metaverse instance or platform has a huge number of limitations at the moment. And like those can be a sidebar, like just unboxing or trying weird tech out. There's so much weird tech out there. Oh my God. You know, all these different things can be little sidebars. And primarily our home is going to be YouTube because, again, YouTube seems to be kind of pulling like Twitch streamers back and TikTokers back at the same time, to the point where they're talking about this triple threat, someone that's good at shorts, long form, and streaming as well. So we're trying to capture that and be that thing. But yeah, it's a weird time. The creator economy it's a whole other subject. NFTs as well, what part they will play in all this, another big subject that occupies my thinking, at least at the moment.
Part of what I hear you saying here, which makes a lot of sense, is the coverage on the metaverse right now is punditry. Even the best forms of it are like smart punditry, perhaps, or maybe it's a documentary or something, but it's not deeply visual and immersive, which feels like such a fundamental disconnect if you're trying to explain, or which, you know, I understand it's about entertainment, not education specifically. So explain with a grain of salt, right? Like if you're trying to do something with the metaverse, to ground it fundamentally in something kind of visual and immersive, as opposed to just like, auditory punditry, feels like a no-brainer, and nobody's really done that well.
Well, there's a lot of things about the metaverse that fundamentally aren't there yet. And that's why being early to this particular story is also a good thing for us to be, because I seem to remember like when 5G or even 4G was up for auction, particularly in the UK. I remember Vodafone and Movistar were all trying to buy that bandwidth. And it just seemed to be like, but what is this thing? Why do we even need it? It's ridiculous. And it was another 12, 13 years before it even came to consumer handsets. And then you were like, oh, that's what that was. Okay, now I get it. I think that's where we are right now. It's just like this long range bet on a thing that, for me, is the future of the internet, and seeing that play out is going to be a really fun thing. But the difference between where we are now and back then is that there are so many kind of different pieces of it, that are sort of analogs or almost adjacent to what's going on, that we can definitely have that. And you're right. The commentary around the metaverse is punditry. It's basically pump my VC bags kind of chat, a lot of it, which is fine, you know, and that there's a place for all of that. But living it from the inside out, like really being the punch bag for this space and trying to figure stuff out and really showing it for what it is, which is like watching my own kids play Roblox. They're just having a blast. They're just having an absolute blast, kind of mucking around, making stuff and expressing themselves. They don't give a shit about Facebook and Cambridge Analytica. They just want to, you know, enjoy themselves.
Yeah.
And that's exactly it. And like, if they're going to watch me tit about, fall over and try ridiculous things, they're going to be inspired to try weird things themselves, and they're going to share it with their friends, and then it's going to spread. Because I honestly believe like that generation of kids, they will rule the metaverse, this first stage of it. It's not going to be us. So like I need to kind of figure out what they like and what they love, and for my own kids to just love what their dad makes, you know?
So Based AF, it is a media company, an entertainment company that is starting with content on YouTube that is trying to blend the metaverse and like weird, wacky, virtual, experiential things with Mr. Beast and more storytelling woven in.
Yeah, 100%. So we are an attention-grabbing entity. Our job is to corner attention and then monetize the shit out of it. Yeah, creator economy, that's what we do. Yeah, that's our job. So when you look at the retention graphs on mass market, you know, mass consumer videos, there's just a certain kind of thing that you do and that works, particularly on YouTube, and you have to sort of sit within that, but then you do your own version of it. So that's really what we've been trying to come up with. The fact that we landed on the metaverse as a niche was partly because I was interested in it, but also because as a business opportunity, full stop, it's very, very interesting because there are a lot of brands spending a lot of money, but there's nowhere for them to really connect to the audiences that might be interested in, you know, piloting these things forward. So from that perspective, it's very interesting. The metaverse will be a lifestyle. You'll live, work, and play in the metaverse. And it will also have a bunch of sub-lifestyles within it. But you have to start with kind of one overarching one. So one of the key things you do as a creator is you start to figure out what that lifestyle you represent is, and then you can start building a range of products that sit within that. And that's kind of the path. Brand integrations will be a big part of it. So our first film will be very brand friendly, put it that way, to showcase what we can do with that. And then, yes, thinking further along the line, when I pitch this to people, particularly to VCs, what I pitch them is we want to be the MTV of the metaverse. So if you think back to like 1981, when MTV launched, there was no music video content on TV. It's something you caught on the Ed Sullivan Show, if you were lucky. MTV changed everything, and it was a bunch of young people that just went out and made what they wanted to make for themselves, and it had this really bizarre tone of voice. It captured a young generation's pop culture fantasies, and it gave birth to a bunch of formats, which if you look at what's on YouTube now, they all came from MTV. Like Jackass is single-handedly responsible for how every YouTuber starts their video now. It's insane. And that's like really quite old now. But then you've got all these reality formats like, you know, The Osbournes, you've got Pimp My Ride. Like this is just seminal TV that's like infused into YouTube now. So what we want to do is be that, but for the metaverse, and hopefully connect up and collect different content creators that fill different niches and build this kind of galaxy of content that's sort of looped under one basic idea, which is metaverse positive, but create the MTV kind of model. That's the long-term bigger picture of it. But that sort of scrappiness, that punkiness, and that sense of capturing something at its inception, that's kind of where we are.
Yeah. And you put it in this context, like MTV for the metaverse. It strikes me that in some ways, what you may end up doing, and you can correct me if it feels like I'm wrong, but is like you have a youth subculture that exists today that's massive, that primarily lives right now on YouTube and on Twitch, and it's very connected to NFTs and crypto, and there's a big overlap in that Venn diagram. You know, it's a part of that subculture. Just like, but gaming and gamers who hate crypto are part of that subculture. The Mr. Beast and YouTube, like that's part of the subculture. And it's what MTV did was capture like youth culture, you know, on the screen. And I feel like that's sort of almost fundamentally at the core of what you're doing, and there's sort of this metaverse wrapping, but it's about speaking to this youth culture that is only going to get bigger.
Yeah, absolutely, and just having a laugh with it. Well, having done videos for like 2.5 years with the Defiant, you kind of get to a place where like, well, there are enough people that like me and like how I do things that they would stick around and give this a go. And there's also just so much confusion around the metaverse. So nobody knows what it is. That people can probably give you like 3 or 4 attributes that should be kind of sort of part of it, maybe, and then they think it's a video game. That's a huge opportunity to really take a risk-free approach to this, which is if it doesn't exist yet and nobody knows what it is, just go out there and start making stuff.
Well, even just technically to gain the technical understanding of how to make content in this way, which is actually something I want to dive into a little bit at the risk of like boring the audience, being like, I'm going to listen to somebody say like haptic A6200 or whatever the heck. But like, yes. I genuinely would like to go there. But before we do, let me ask, why did you take VC money as opposed to going the let's, you know, NFT crowdfund route?
Yes. So, okay. So being a creator is mega risky, right? You know this. It is. Oh. It's insanely risky. So if you think crypto is volatile, like just the view curve on your videos, if you're off in terms of what you do that week, or if you just make a crap video, it can be all over the place. And I think it's just very, very difficult to really go out and take the risks that you need to take and make the content that will be your signature without worrying about whether it hits the algorithm or not. That's tough to do if you haven't got some runway underneath you. The second thing is, like, I have spent a lot of time speaking to founders in this space. For better or for worse, some of them you can see that they don't know what they're doing, and some of them are incredible. And the thing that I wanted to do was test my ideas in front of a really knowledgeable audience. And so I started kind of talking to some VCs about what I was up to and got some critique back. And what I got mostly back was like, dude, we really want to see you do this because we think this could be huge. And so the main thing for me was getting a chance to pitch to VCs, get a chance to get their expertise, and particularly the VCs that we have ended up going with, who are extremely knowledgeable, particularly about the NFT space and tokenomics and the metaverse altogether. It feels like we just got a much better chance of it than if we'd gone independent and raised money outside. And it's not like we couldn't have had those conversations with those people, but now that they're invested in us, we have that expertise in hand, and they are really, really responsive to ideas. They want to test things out. Plus they have an amazing Rolodex. So, I can't tell you who our VCs are at the moment. I'd love to, because they are awesome. But those conversations open up. It's just like, dude, you should check these guys out. Let me set up a call. Bosh, now we're on to something. It's just this fast track to the ideas and the things that I need to make this happen, which are new and nobody really knows that they're being built yet. And so you can have those conversations at a very kind of straightforward level because you've been introduced properly. And that's not to say we're not going to raise money with an NFT sale, because we are. But that NFT drop serves a different purpose, and it can be what it wants to be because we have enough runway beneath our feet to kind of really set the tone of the work that we're doing and set the tone of the work that we want to do. Because, I mean, at certain times, working with the Defiant, you're looking at the numbers going, this isn't working. We're not connecting with people and stuff. And then you start trying to trend jack, and you start trying to look at what is hot and you know, try and kind of pull the audience back to you with something that's trending right now, and you just go, it just feels so dirty. And so I want to be able to, you know, put enough videos together where we're like, no, this is us. And if you don't like it, that's fine. We're not here to be the most popular. We're here to kind of set the standard for what we love.
Though your ambition is pretty high. You're like, I want 1 million subscribers, year one minimum.
Yes, but we have to do it the right way, right? We have to do it in a way that we've got an audience that's a huge advocates for what we do, and then that feel like they're really part of it. And we also have to make the right videos. The other thing is, like, again, with the Defiant, we went to over 100,000 subscribers really quite fast, but not really seeing that many views on each video. And that's because there was us and there was Bankless. Basically, that was it. You didn't have much of a choice. So it was easy for people to subscribe to one or the other. So you've got a concentrated piece of the pie. It's the kind of the same thing in the metaverse. We will be the only one really doing anything like this at that scale. And so I kind of just trust in that. And I don't know. I want to have the freedom to really kind of put a seal on what it is that we do and the way we do things and the way we like to tell stories. And I trust implicitly that will work and that we'll be good enough at it to keep people really excited for what we do next, each episode, So
you mentioned there is still an NFT sale happening. Explain to folks, when that is, what that is. You said the VC raise is to allow you to kind of let the NFT drop serve the purpose it's meant to serve. Explain what purpose it's meant to serve.
Okay, so the VC raise happened during the bear market.
Snaps.
You saw
Snaps for SuperMassive.
You saw what happened, right? It was like, oh God. And there was a lot of very reticent cash sitting on the sidelines. So we were very specific, like we didn't try to raise too much. So I looked at the numbers and went, okay, this is what we need for 12 months, which is by anyone's, any measure, it's not enough. But it's enough. It was enough to get us going and enough to keep, give us some momentum. So we still need to raise. And our original plan was to do it entirely with an NFT drop. And then I kind of got pushed away from that and back into this VC thing, mainly because the VCs I spoke to were really receptive about it. So that was a good starting point. But the point is, we are trying to build an audience, like a big audience, but also a good audience. So there's two parts of that. There is your super fan audience, and then there's like the broader audience that will probably not care about NFTs, but just likes to watch you fall on your face and get hit with a fish, whatever ends up being. But the core audience are the ones that do the damage. And there's an amazing guy called David Goggins, who is a good sort of touch point if you're wondering what I'm doing next. But he is an ultra marathon runner. He was a Navy SEAL, and it's just this insane guy who just refuses to quit. You can't hurt him. He just keeps going. And he talks about this quote from Heraclitus about the one warrior. And he says, in a group of 100 men who go into battle, 10 of them shouldn't be there. 80 of them are just targets. Or is it 90? No, it's 90 of them are just targets. 9 of them are the true fighters, and we're lucky to have them. And then he says, one is the one warrior, and we'll bring them all back. For me, that kind of represents NFT communities. Like 10% of them shouldn't be there. 80% of them, not targets, they're just flippers. 9 of them are true fighters, like they're the real kind of hardcore. And then there's one true warrior that's just like stands up as a shining example of everything that's good about a community, and you're lucky to have them. But for me, like 9% of a community is where all the action and where all the value is. And as I'm kind of researching the creator economy, I keep reading VCs who are talking about the very specific group of people who will provide most of your income. It's your super fans. It's not your mass audience. They will do a lot of your marketing for you, but where the value is super fans. And for me, I wanted to create an NFT that would represent those super fans, that would be able to participate in events for us in the metaverse, that would share content, that would have a very specific job to do, and that would be rewarded for that. Because if I say job, it's work. Work should be paid. And then that gets you into all sorts of trouble, because how do you pay them? How do you pay them, Carly?
Are you securities law questions? Is this what you're throwing back at me? That's my job. I'm supposed to say back, well, SuperMassive, how do you get around securities laws? I mean, but let me say this, right? Mr. Beast obviously engages his subscribers all the time in his content, and he pays them. I just saw one this morning, right, that popped up on YouTube that was like, if you stay in this circle for 100 days, we'll pay you $500,000. And nobody's, of course, saying that's
exactly
a security.
And it's a game show. So it's a game show. And everyone's terrified of securities laws, because what it's effectively saying is if you own this thing, you will be participating in the upside, like revenue share, these kinds of things. That's problematic. However, if someone works and they actually do some work and you clarified that in fact it is work and you set the terms of that work, there's no issue.
Yeah.
Particularly if they do it more than once. Like, it's not to say that you shouldn't be careful on them and just, you know, but like fundamentally it's very possible.
Yeah. Well, I think too of there's a guy named Just Maiko who's a big TikTok celebrity dancer. He, I think, made a cameo appearance in like the latest Spider-Man movie or something like that because he has 50 million TikTok followers. He came on the show because he and a partner are starting a company called Joystick, which fundamentally is similarly like, guilds and gaming, and you can play the game till the end of time with like no stakes, but the second you actually put your real NFT, you can like then also like stake your actual real NFT, and that's when you can actually win, prize money or this or that. And it feels like the world is definitely moving in that NFT as a way to create stakes or create involvement that is already happening today. But this just kind of tightens up that relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. We also recognize that a lot of cool things happen in the metaverse, or in metaverses. Probably not the right way to describe it, but I think everyone kind of understands that Decentraland is a metaverse instance, or it's a virtual world. Cool things happen there all the time. No one shows up. And it's a shame. So we wanted to build a community that would show up. And that if we did something in a metaverse, they would be there and they'd be part of it, and they would be incentivized to be part of it. I mean, at the end of the day, what we need is an army of people that will press play on a video within 4 hours of it being uploaded and let it go to the end, because the algorithm likes nothing more than people who watch to the end. So we just need to make that what I think is a pretty low lift, because let's be honest, you can press play and leave the room. You don't even need to be there. But like, that action is worth something to us, and it's worth something to me, because ultimately the reason I want to get to 1 million subscribers in 12 months is because beyond that, scaled up beyond that point, all of the ideas that we have around doing this suddenly become really viable. Like, up until 1 million subscribers, they're scratchy, but not great. But beyond that, and at that scale, and particularly if we're making really good videos that get big numbers and we do it in the right way, then it gets really, really interesting. So that's why we just have to get there as quickly as possible.
Can you explain, does it require you to give away too much about what you're thinking about doing to explain why that's true, why past 1 million followers, it sort of fundamentally changes?
It would give it a little bit too much away. It's about economies of scale, though. Like, there's a great podcast on Delphi with Blake Robbins, who's one of the early investors in 100 Thieves. And he wrote a lot about creator economy and during the pandemic, like so many did. But he was specifically talking about how someone could be a full-time fan. So being a fan could be their job, which has always stuck with me, because it felt like that was something that Web3 could be particularly good at. And that was also his point. Like, Web3 can create the tools to make that possible. There's a lot of tinkering and piping that has to be built in order to make that possible. And it gets a little tricky in terms of tracking what people did, connecting Web 2 data to Web 3 data. But
meaning like, hey, did you share this on your Twitter a lot? And was there actual engagement on it? And plugging into the APIs. Did you share this on your Facebook? Yeah, to really determine.
So like, who's actually going to do that? Like, you want that to be the 9% of your community that's really super engaged, and those super fans. And so that's basically kind of part of it. And like, having an NFT that has its own life and has its own community and has a visual representation of something is really important. So that's the based heads. We have created what I think is a really cool collection. It's proper artwork, top to toe, head, full body. They will be issued as 3D files that you can take to your metaverse of choice as well. That's all on the roadmap. But beyond that, I can't talk about any of the rest of it, because I would get into trouble if I did. And it's not because I'm in trouble or that I'm doing something dodgy. It's just that the point of good storytelling is you leave room for the audience to make up their own mind. And I'm not going to say anything about that until after we've sold them. So,
which will be in late November? Is that the time?
Late November. We're going to be we're going to be making a promo film for the drop, which is going to be shot in beginning of November. It's going to be live action, like real actors. It'd be shot like a proper film. I mean, who does that? Like it's usually animation and Unreal Engine and game stuff.
Yeah.
No, we're doing live action, real characters, real film. And that will go out last week of November. And then our first film will go out just before Christmas, but our first event will be the second week of December. So there's like, once the drop happens, there'll be a bunch of challenges for our community to take on. And if they do a good job, then they might get something nice for Christmas. And they also might get something really nice for 2023. And then we're into the big challenge, which is 12 months, 1 million subscribers. So it's basically prove to us that you've got what it takes to be a base head and be a member of the community. And if it works out, then all bets are off and we can just go for it.
You've been teasing thoughts, I would say, about royalties on Twitter.
Yeah.
And how the royalty situation that we're seeing play out, which is effectively that you do have a lot of people avoiding royalties now, and projects like your Yugas and your Doodles are trying to figure out, okay, what does our recurring revenue look like? Because this is trending in the opposite direction. And how that connects to you as somebody who's thinking about doing an NFT drop. What can you share on all of that?
Well, Gordon Goner, Wiley Aronow, was on a podcast, let's say, bragging about how very, very, very profitable their NFTs have been and were, where he said were. And I just listened to it and went, yeah, you can say goodbye to all of that. Because, I mean, it's not like royalties are dead, because a lot of people will still preferentially trade on OpenSea, but, it's on its way out. Let's be honest, because they're not enforceable on chain. So you have to think about how you would, if you want recurring revenue, how you might do it, because royalties won't be the thing. Inevitably, probably what that means is that your initial drop has to be more expensive. If you are kind of factoring in those royalties as part of the, a 12-month projected earnings on your NFT, you'll have to make the drop more expensive. There's other ways to do it though. So for instance, we might well look at launching on SuperSwap and being our own market maker. So we take the fees on those trades instead of taking royalties. That way we can take out the power. We can do that. That's sort of just saying, well, royalties are dead, so who cares? Let's just go and play in that particular ocean and, be damned with it. Definitely looking into that, because I think it's, that's probably the way you would do it. There's no way to enforce royalties on chain unless you make a completely new token standard, which ain't going to happen. So what else could you do? Well, here's an idea that I was kind of thinking about over the weekend, which was the paid reveal. Can you see where I'm going with this?
I can see what a paid reveal might look like another moment to get revenue in post-sale before you've actually revealed it.
So this is an interesting idea. I'm not sure if we're going to go down this route, but I definitely it got me thinking. Most of the activity that happens around the sort of early drop is just trading activity, and it doesn't matter whether the asset's revealed or not, because the asset's just the asset. So the token is the token, and those who kind of say that the NFT is just the token itself and the artwork is, whatever, they're kind of right. So just give them the token. And then if you want to go further, you could basically pitch it like this. Okay, listen, this NFT costs 0.12 ETH. I'm going to let you buy it for 0.06, so a 50% discount. If you want the art, you have to pay the full price. And paying the full price for a revealed token gives you access to the private Discord channel where we give you this. It gives you access to other things that you set up. You treat it like a subscription, basically. Yeah.
Do you extend this out? Is that where you naturally go?
Exactly.
And then at the 1 year mark, you have to re-up your subscription effectively?
No, not even. No. So it'd be a one-time thing. Like, I think it's, over the course of time, you would want all the tokens to be revealed. But there's another way to do it as well, which is, basically you say the full functionality of this NFT is X, but the only thing you can do if you don't reveal is trade it. And that's it. You don't get access to anything. You get no perks. You don't get the artwork. You don't get anything. But you still get exposure to the overlying upside of this NFT floor price. Good for you. Well done. But rarity, all these other things, denied. And then you say, okay, well, anytime you sell this NFT to a new owner, it becomes de-revealed. So the new owner has to pay the reveal price. Tricky to enforce unless you do all transactions. And that's where it falls down for me, because I wouldn't necessarily want to penalize every, let's say you want to switch your NFT to a ledger and I'm penalizing you for it. Doesn't feel fair. So I don't know how to get around that. So I'm probably not going to go down that route, but it definitely feels
that's
like
really interesting. I mean, you would have that's interesting. I mean, once it's been revealed, right? Like, then the rarity, so the next buyer knows what they're getting, and so does it create weird market dynamics where like the least rare ones don't get bought because nobody wants to pay the re-reveal price for? But I think you're right. Like, I'm thinking about this in real time, and if you're bullish on the project and you think the line will go up, so to speak, that's very interesting.
It's from a project side. What it would force you to do, well, I think what's interesting is that it separates out your 90, whatever it was, your 80% of your community that's just targets, that is just traders, and they can just trade, and that's fine. What you're trying to do is reward the 9% by making that really valuable. And so you are forced to think much, much harder about the value to these superfans and why they're important, and giving them an identity and giving them a separate space and all these kind of things. But it's just like, it's difficult to you get into trouble when you're like transferring them from one wallet to another. That's the problem for me.
Well, so where I get concerned about the royalty piece, I guess it's everywhere, right? But like for artists, for one-of-one artists, so this feels helpful there, or not even one-of-one, just people who are creating art for the sake of art. If you're buying that art for the sake of having that art, then obviously you're going to want to reveal it. And this becomes a way, if you're saying at a smart contract level, we can program in something such that it basically hides itself upon transfer. I think that's really interesting. And I don't even mind so much you're penalized if you transfer it to your ledger. Okay, it is what it is. Maybe, maybe it can sense if you're moving to a ledger wallet at some point. I don't know, whatever. The other use case for royalties that were always so powerful to me, that frankly were one of the things that really got me into the space in the first place, was ticket sales, and thinking like, okay, great. Now you have a bunch of bots that go and buy up Katy Perry tickets, and they resell them or whatever, and now Katy and her management company and whoever else can get a cut of those resales. Doesn't that seem really powerful? And I'm thinking about this as like, you buy tickets for what's it called, for like Amtrak, or not Amtrak is a bad example, for like the Metro North here in New York, or for the New Jersey Transit, right? You buy the ticket and then you have to activate that ticket, they're like, once you're actually on the train. It's like something like that, where like, okay, you can sell this NFT ticket, but to actually use it, you have to exactly like turn it on, and there's a fee for turning it on. Yeah.
And I guess this was influenced by junior and senior tranches in DeFi. So you can have a junior tranche which earns more interest, but is very volatile. And if things go wrong, you pay the senior tranches, and then the senior tranches have this fixed rate of interest. And it's just separating trading activity from like true utility. Felt kind of interesting. It's definitely doable. This is what I've discovered this morning from talking to some developers. It's definitely doable. It's just from an optics perspective, like if you, for instance, we need high volume, but not just in terms of sales. Everyone needs that, but actually in terms of eyeballs doing things for us that matter, i.e. clicking on a video and watching it. If I'm restricting who can be part of that conversation, I'm creating basically a class system. And
you mean restricting it because, but spell this out more, right? Because again, you're just trying to enforce a royalty system that was expected up to a month ago. So it's because of this transfer between accounts piece. You don't want to penalize your holders for wanting to transfer between accounts.
No,
or is there something deeper there?
I don't want to deliberately limit the reach of what I'm doing. And also it feels odd to create two separate communications channels for a community that should really be operating as a hive mind, and reducing the ability of the really engaged ones to influence the less engaged ones. Because that's the problem. You get, basically, if you have these smaller, limited channels, they become echo chambers, and that's no good. But that's really just that's a kind of mechanical community part of this. The revenue part of it is definitely interesting for me. You still have to build a mechanism on your website, for instance, where people can pay the whatever it is you want to call it, a freedom dividend. And
oh wow! You were trying to Yang reference me there intentionally.
I was totally Yang referencing you there.
That's incredible! Wow, I get there's 1% of this audience that just got that reference, and but I really appreciate it. Continue.
I mean, half of me really wants to do it just to say fuck you, I'm doing it, and make a point. But half of me is like really scared because it's like the thing that we want is to be really inclusive and get lots of people through the door and get them watching the videos. So I don't know. This is why I'm talking to you about it now.
I think this is really interesting. I mean, if you work backwards from fair market value of this thing, and you start from like fair market value is whatever you determine it actually is, and you do set the initial price to be less than that.
Yeah. And
you're really clear to your community. I don't know. I think it could work, right? Like you're really clear to your community. Like we think 0.6, we think 1.2, whatever, wherever you're landing, 0.12 is what this should be worth. We really want you in the channel, etc. I mean, you could do like a holding fee. Like I think about, so I interviewed Lars Lance. Oh, I'm so sorry. Lars Doucette. I'm so sorry that I'm not remembering your name properly. It's just that one little letter. Anyways, he's fantastic. He's done a lot of research on like the history of like land-like assets in gaming contexts. And I had him on to talk about why land sales are a bad idea. And inevitably, when you have land-like assets in a game, you always end up having like housing recessions you would see play out in the real world. And one of the solves for this that he really outlined well, I thought, was like, you can have a holding tax for like, if you're going to sit on this land and not use it productively, you're going to be taxed in a way that makes it not worth it to you to hold this. This probably doesn't make sense. Again,
yeah, that's the Harbinger tax. Is that right? Harbinger tax system?
Might be. I don't know. There is a name for it. It's like a Georgian economists or something are apparently the group that care about this. But like, if there is some sort of like effectively recurring tax, how do you enforce it? That's the question. Whatever. Like on. I'd have to think more about it. I think this is really interesting. I think it's viable, especially if you do. I mean, everything takes effort, right? But if you really put it out there and you really communicate to folks like why it's so important that they be a part of this bigger channel, I think a high percentage of people would buy in and do the reveal and like and actually properly be part of the community. Yeah, it's a really cool idea.
There are some other things, which is we hate the way. If you have an NFT and there's an airdrop, the two are disconnected. So it's a separate thing. And we feel like they should be conjoined. Like they should be quantumly entangled in some way.
Spell us out to how this connects. And I apologize for folks who I'm a little bit under the weather this morning, so I'm sucking on a lozenge, and I apologize if that's a horrendous.
We're going back to it. It's the ASMR. It's just come back. It's like,
oh my god,
sucking on a lozenge.
I apologize for this entire episode, folks. Connect that up for me.
Yeah. So this idea of multi-resource assets, essentially, so an NFT that can be upgraded to contain, for instance, a 3D model, to contain its companion piece, to contain whatever, particular pieces of collateral it's collected along the way within it, unseparated. That's a real problem. So if you have an unrevealed NFT, you don't get access to any of that. So it's withheld. That becomes somewhat complicated. The thing I've learned in crypto is that if you think you can create a system in which information can be hidden or withheld, there is somebody that will go along and prove that you're an idiot, and they can actually do it. Guaranteed. If you put a roadblock up, someone will turn up with a D12 dozer and smash it down. That's just what's going to happen. So you're better off just going royalties are not dead yet. They'll be dead next year. Let's just take whatever we can.
And until then, we're gonna
just take whatever we can, and we're just gonna go and hype the crap out of this thing and take the volume. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. All we need to do is do a Twitter Spaces where we just talk crap.
That's what I'm going to say.
Folks,
Folks, if you're listening to this, tweet at SuperMassive, tweet at myself. I mean, this feels like a no-brainer to kind of crowdsource this because there is something really interesting here. I think this works. The question is, like, it's like with all things, right? This definitely works and it's definitely interesting, and I would be shocked if it wasn't right for somebody's project.
Yeah, well, that's
frankly,
right.
Artists, like artists' projects, where it's not about utility. It's not about, hey, we're trying to galvanize you as an army to go proselytize the rest of the world about us. And which is, somewhat, an artist obviously loves to have fans that want to do that. But it's more about they want to hold the actual artwork, and there's a reveal fee.
Yeah, 100%. And these, I forget which VC it is. It's Travis Constantine. Yeah, this VC is basically saying, having worked for Bon Jovi and In Excess, they realize that like the super fans are where price is no object.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not like you want to gouge them, but you also don't want to nickel and dime the rest of your community. So it's like, okay, focus on where the value actually is. And again, it's that Heraclitus quote. It's exactly on point for me. It's like 80% don't give a shit. They just want to trade and flip and whatever. And that's fine. Go nuts.
This is what NFTs are. And I want to get on some mainstream shows and actually test this and see what the reaction from, call it your crypto skeptics, but not your crypto like delusional, like derangement syndrome. Like there's obviously people who just have like complete derangement syndrome around NFTs and crypto, and they like just a complete lack of curiosity, and they're just convinced it's a scam. And you're like, you think we're all just idiots? Like what do you like? We're all just like that massively stupid. Anyways, so. But the people who are like, clearly there's something here, but I'm kind of confused by it. And the argument is effectively like, we're in late stage capitalism in the West, right? And there's a different use case, I think, for a lot of this stuff in developing nations that's really interesting and compelling. But like, take it for here in the United States, for example, or like, we're in this era of late stage capitalism where it's really about, and this sounds very cynical, but like squeezing more drops out of the lemons, because we're not making entirely new lemons anymore, like a lot of the, and that's where NFTs come in, which is they allow you to develop a deeper relationship with the people that already like you, are already paying. And this is not just for creators, obviously, this is for businesses and brands. And whether you end up making that money off of the NFTs themselves, or it's because you've created that deeper relationship, you can monetize them in other ways. That's what this is doing. It's like more squeezes out of a lemon that you've already juiced the shit out of because you're in late stage capitalism. Yeah. I'd be really curious what the skeptics think about that. Well, putting it like that.
I did a 2-part film about why gamers hate NFTs. And it was really instructive because it gave me an insight into the extractive mechanics that game publishers have put into games historically. Again and again and again and again and again, to the point where gamers just felt screwed, utterly, completely screwed. And they just kind of, as a community, they're pretty vocal and aggro-driven, let's be honest. But the point was, it stuck with me. And I look at the creator economy and the way it's kind of professionalizing and scaling to these massive heights, and listening to a lot of podcasts with Mr. Beast and his team, with Reduxia, his manager at Night Media. Here's what you hear. Build an audience by making great content. Goes without saying. Once you have that audience, monetize that audience. And here are all these different ways that you can monetize that audience. You can do courses. You can do merch. You can do AdSense. You can open another channel and do more AdSense and brand integrations, all these kind of things. What is the bit that's missing from all of this?
Value creation for your community. I mean, the content is the value creation, but like...
It's the audience. Yeah. It's the audience gets fucked.
Right.
At every stage. The audience is just this big milk cow being constantly squeezed.
Yes.
To get more milk for the creator. So the creator's on top going, hey guys, watch my video, yeah? And buy my courses, yeah? And everyone goes, wow, he's amazing. I really want to be closer to him because like, wow. And then it's like, okay, great. So what does the audience get out of it? Well, they get closer to you. Ooh, that's nice. Just huddle up in the warmth of your magnificence. And they get a t-shirt. Oh, it's a nice t-shirt. Makes me feel good. Like I was talking to G Money about this. He's like, dude, I love apes. I love punks. no way I'm wearing a punk t-shirt out in public. It's just no chance. He's like, I made black t-shirts, and if you know what, you scan the thing on the side and it will tell you a little bit about NFTs and stuff, but like, it's just ridiculous. I don't want that. Nobody wants that. So
let me, finish your thought, then I want to respond.
Building to the big point here, which is you have these two pillars of the creator economy: build an audience and squeeze every last motherfucking drop you can out of them by monetizing. But for me, I think there's a third pillar, and it's the bit that comes back to Blake Robbins and full-time fans, all this, which is share the spoils. Because if you do this right, you can make an absolute ton of money. But I feel like audiences get a shitty deal. And another thing that Blake Robbins said was any major creator right now looking at the NFT space, looking at Web3, isn't going to touch it because they don't understand it's too difficult and it's too toxic and there's too much pushback on it. Why would they? You need someone that's going to build from the get-go in this space and work these ideas in from inception for any of this to make any sense and for it to work. And I was like, well, that's me. I'm going to do it. So the third pillar, I call it the third pillar because it sounds good and it'll look good on the top of a Medium article, but like the third pillar of the creator economy with Robin Schmidt. Oh God, that killed me. But you know what I mean? Like that, this is the third pillar, share the spoils. If we can get that bit right, I think we're going to be really onto something. But like I always say to my VCs, I don't have the answer. I have a set of directions I want to go in. It's a process, not a product. Yeah. And if we get a community that's willing to go in, experiment with us, and we value them and make it worth their while, we should be able to figure it out.
COINSHIFT is a leading treasury management and infrastructure platform for DAOs and crypto businesses that need to manage their treasury operations. Every crypto org needs to manage its treasury, and COINSHIFT offers a simple, flexible, and efficient multi-chain treasury management platform built on top of the highly secure Gnosis Safe. With COINSHIFT, your organization can go from primitive single-chain treasury management to expressive, flexible, and multi-chain treasury features, such as global user management, global contacts, proposal management, and many other features that can be shared across an entire organization, allowing users to save time and reduce operational burdens and gas costs. COINSHIFT even has data tools like account reporting across the 7 chains on which it operates. Used by industry powerhouses such as Uniswap Grants, Balancer, Consensus, and Masari, COINSHIFT is speeding up the coordination and efficiency of the organizations that use it. You have to keep up with the frontier, and COINSHIFT makes that easy. So sign up at coinshift.xyz/bankless. Do you buy NFTs? Do you like playing in the profile picture games or searching for underpriced rares? Or you're part of an NFT community and you want that sweet social experience that your NFT brings you? Of course you want these things. It's why you're listening to this podcast, and it's also why you should check out SINTRA. SINTRA is the most powerful and friendly all-in-one time saver for NFT investors. A new social-fi investment app with real-time sales, floor price tracking, Twitter mentions, and 700,000 wallets, all available to check out. All infused into a social experience to connect you with other like-minded NFT investors. In SINTRA, you can do your social media things like post, reply, share, ask questions, react, right next to where you showcase your beloved and cherished NFTs. And you also get a customizable feed of NFT activity, keeping you up to speed with the always changing meta of the NFT world. If you're not using SINTRA, you're falling behind. So go to sintra.com/bankless and connect your wallet to enter the world of SINTRA.
Well, you know, what's funny about this, and you've referenced Mr. Beast now obviously a few times, and even in this example, Mr. Beast gives away money every video. Like, does he do videos where he's not giving away like $500,000 to somebody? Like, I feel like the irony is that he has actually built his brand, in my opinion, on sharing the spoils in a different way than you're describing. In some ways, though, in some ways, probably exactly the way you're describing. So he's already kind of doing that in his own way. I do think NFTs just make that process that much more efficient. You know,
they definitely can do. And you're absolutely right. So Mr. Beast is an outlier for all sorts of different reasons. He is the one warrior. He's that 1% guy because he doesn't give up. He just kept on going. Everyone else who was around him that had access to the same analytics that he was using gave up. He didn't. Yeah. And you're right. He does give money away. And people think that giving money away is the thing. And it's not for him. It's just that he just has this really weird, strange viewpoint on the world, and he's very money driven as well. He wants to be a billionaire. He's made no secret of that. But the thing is, like, the business that gets built out of him is all about monetizing the audience.
Yeah.
Did you read or listen to Balaji talking about his network state at all?
I have on multiple occasions. I don't know if if I'm the most up to date, though I need to be, because I'm interviewing Chica, who's the founder of the Afropolitan Project, which is fully based on the network state apologies concept around that. So I know the basics for sure.
Well, I mean, yeah, essentially it's if you have a group of distributed people unified around collective action, that at some point you ought to be able to get that group of people recognized by the United Nations. And it always felt to me like large creators could, in fact, do that if they wanted to.
I didn't say this earlier, but obviously, like you were saying, like we're going to be a lifestyle brand, and it's like, yeah, let's be clear, all lifestyle brands at this point are going to start as media companies or content creators, right? Like it's your chocolate company is Mr. Beast, it's your all future fashion lines are Kim Kardashian and Emily Ratajkowski, and like it's all of that. So I think that's almost redundant to suggest that you're going to be a lifestyle brand. It's like media companies are all becoming brands, and brands are all stemming from media companies / content creators.
Brands are trying to be media companies, and I think they've capitulated in that to a degree, and now they realize that actually, we need to partner up with these bloody influencers.
Yeah.
God,
yeah. Oh, for sure. Well, so let me just go back quickly, and I know we're running a little long on time here. If you can stick around for a little longer, I would love to keep chatting. So the value extraction piece, when I give that example of like we're in late stage capitalism and we're trying to squeeze the last drops out of his lemon, I do worry that what that is then like hand wavy over or dismissive of is like it sounds like what everybody in the mainstream fears about NFTs, which is that it's like a scam to just like take our money. And I don't mean that. I mean it's also a way for the brand or the company or the person themselves to create more value for the fan, that is their deepest fan. And therefore have a monetization process back. Like this is very much a two-way street. It's Starbucks saying, hey, you're going to get to come to our, coffee manufacturing plantation in Colombia or whatever and get this unique experience to get closer to us. And then in exchange, we're going to ask you to, buy more lattes down the line or like whatever that looks like. But I do think that the point of the NFT is that it's very much a two-way street and you have to be creating value for that holder. I don't think we should be so dismissive of the buying of the t-shirt. Like what I hear G Money saying is like, cool, he's not the CryptoPunk super fan. To your point, there's going to be out of the 10,000, 1% or, whatever it'll be that. It'll be 100 people that will actually be that super fan. Like even within our super fan communities, you can have the super fan, 20% who will wear that CryptoPunk t-shirt, who will love the opportunity to wear that CryptoPunk t-shirt. I just had Tom Bilyeu on the podcast last week. It will have aired a week ago by the time this is airing probably. And he made this really profound point that somebody he was interviewing made, which was like, the guy worked at Lego and was like, oh, the fans wanted to be heard. And Tom was like, well, what did it mean? What does that mean? They wanted to be heard. We hear that all the time. And he was like, I needed to give them an opportunity to stand in line. So like when Lego had some new drop, they did a whole thing where at midnight and they had people lined up, thousands of people lined up. And it's like, this thing that sounds like it'd be a miserable thing for folks, it's their opportunity to prove how much they love whatever. Like that's part of social signaling. So the selling the person a t-shirt, if they're willing to buy it, right, it's because for them, it's an opportunity to say something about themselves. So like, it is extractive, but if you're actually properly creating the value, it shouldn't be, right? Yeah.
But Tom's a super interesting guy, actually. He knows a lot about NFTs. I interviewed him like 18 months ago. Wow. Like early in the NFT process. But there's a really interesting interview he did with David Goggins as well. We've gone full circle.
We have.
But yeah, Tom's a boss. He's not wrong. You're not wrong. It's just that I value different things. And I'm also I'm playing devil's advocate a little bit here, which is...
No, and I think you're right. We need to evolve the relationship. There is a next stage to that relationship that I think the share the spoils model, if there's a little bit of squinting to see the future of what you're talking about.
Yeah,
it's fantastic.
We're not an NFT project. We have an NFT, but we have to think like an NFT project and think through the expectations that communities have around NFTs, which is when airdrop, and the obsession with the floor price, which is, again, kind of why I was thinking about this paid reveal model. It feels horribly obstructive, but like your positive reaction has given me a reason to revisit it and think about it some more, because I still got time to figure out what our drop mechanic is going to be. But yeah, we are a YouTube channel. We are content creators. We have an NFT that's part of it. And in a way, it is merch. We're also going to have some physical merch. We're figuring out the physical merch part of it as well. But it has to be in line with this idea of being a lifestyle brand. And weirdly enough, we do actually live it. Like I spend an awful lot of time in VR. The first film that we're doing, the first film that we're doing is putting me through some stuff that I never expected to be put through. And it's forcing me to reevaluate a lot of the things that I wear, funnily enough. A very specific piece of apparel that doesn't function for me properly when I'm mucking about in the metaverse. And so it was like, well, how do we create that garment
product
that does work for extended periods of time in the metaverse? Let's say you're going 10, 12 hours in VR. Like, what do I need? And it turns out that product doesn't exist yet. So like, okay, well, maybe that's where we need to focus. So we're already thinking along those lines of like, what is an appropriate piece of kind of material? I haven't even talked about like the world that our base heads exist in. We have like an entire kind of vision of the metaverse that we've dreamt up called Trashland. And we call it Trashland because it's where it's just filled with rejects from the NFT space. Stuff that's just crash landed there and been thrown away and forgotten about. And it's because like when you think of the metaverse, it just feels like this empty wasteland where there's isn't really anything there yet. There's a very
There's just like
metaphor.
Kevin in the corner.
Yes,
like,
Kevin is in Trashland.
Tendies, you have Tendies. What was that? Zagabond's like one of his old NFT projects,
Azukis, all of that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. That's awesome. So that gets me to the product piece we're saying, and I will wrap this up at some point here, but I think we started a little late. I do want to just get a little bit technical with you, and for anybody who wants to come with us on this journey, because I do think that's so exciting about what you're doing, and you'll end up having so much value to bring to everybody who comes after, because you will have experimented with this stuff on a technical level. My understanding is you're building in Unity.
Yes.
Let's maybe set the stage. Like I'm assuming you're building out sort of sets and environments, and that's then a combination of you need to have like haptic suit things. Like what is the gear that is required, if you can brief us on it to build this out? I'm
filming this on I think it's a $9,000 webcam. I think we could call it that. So it's a Sony FX6. It's a beautiful camera. It's got a very nice lens on the front of it, and we've got lights and everything else. But like this setup is extremely expensive and unnecessary. But like I like shooting on nice cameras, and I like kind of creating cinematic looking material. I think it's probably what we're best known for more than anything else, is how nice our stuff looks. And so the virtual version of that is game engines like Unreal Engine, Unity. You need to, if you want to build bespoke experiences, like for instance, at the moment we're building something in Monaverse, you have to know some Unity. We're building a really cool thing for a big YouTuber to go out and probably in January or maybe February, where we have to build the whole thing in Unity. We have to understand the game engine, how it works, what to do with it. That's kind of all part of it. And then there's the tricky problem of taking a character and bringing it to life realistically. And normally that process it's very lengthy, animation, CG pipeline, motion capture, all these kind of things. And what we're trying to do is reduce that down to something that can be done as quickly as we would if we just pick up a camera and shoot. That does mean building your own sets in Unreal or in Unity, but we can reuse those, and there can be assets that we can come back to again and again. The hard bit is the motion capture studio timeline. So we're building that in the studio over there. It's getting installed next month. I've been talking about this for so long, it's almost boring now, but we have 20 infrared cameras and GIMP suits with little, markers on them. I will be dropping a little teaser of it tomorrow on my Twitter.
Oh, wow. I'm excited to see it.
By the time this goes out, it'll be yesterday or 5 days ago.
No, by the time this goes out, it'll be, because it'll come out on Wednesday of next week.
Wednesday next week. So like a week and a half ago, folks, you would have seen on Twitter that, but there will be a glimpse of that. But like it's a Lycra suit that you can attach Velcro to, and it has little infrared sensitive, I forget what they call them. They're just little balls anyway. It's the same thing.
You can picture it, like if you've seen, anybody behind
Avatar,
the scenes,
like
of
Avatar
a
was
special
shot like
effects
that.
movie. Yeah.
So that's a really big piece of it. Then almost the hardest part of it is face capture. So you have a helmet with a phone or a camera on the front of it, and it will track your face in real time. and then convert that into shape data that then gets fed to your 3D model. And then you have to take all of that data, clean it up, and create a smoothing algorithm that sits on top of it, and then sliders in a custom interface that allow you to tweak the very specific settings of that very specific character, secondary muscle animations. But once you've built that, it's very easy to pick it up and just do it again, because you have the studio, and the studio remembers the settings and remembers what you did there. Whereas with an Accent suit or a Rococo suit, it's much, 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 much harder to do that. And they use the different kind of, inertial sensors like the ones you find in your iPhone. So it'll know that you've moved, but it becomes very difficult for it to keep track of where the floor is over time. It's pretty good to begin with, but then it sort of drifts off and you have to recalibrate. So the system we're setting up is one we can have multiple people top to toe. We can trap props. We can have a virtual camera. So we can basically, after a while, probably about 6 months, it'll be like the holodeck in Star Trek. So we'll be able to just put anything in there and film it and do whatever we want with it. But that's not going to happen overnight. It's a very long, laborious process of building custom blueprints for different settings and different props and everything else. But eventually we'll get to a place where it's really, really dialed in.
2 questions. Can you share with us how much it costs to build a studio like that?
Yes. Good question. MKBHD, tech tuber extraordinaire, basically covers tech, and he covers it very nicely, but it's the same tech that everyone else covers, and they can also do reviews of it. He said one interesting thing, which he bought a robot, one of these kind of very, versatile robots that you can shoot kind of, like if you have a burger being built in slow motion and the camera just moves around it and can repeat the move over and over. It's one piece of tech that he spent, I think, $250,000 on that nobody else has. We considered this motion capture studio the same thing, which is what can we do that nobody else will be able to do? And if they wanted to do it, it would take them probably a year to get to the place we can get to. And it was this. So all in all, like a 20 camera system like the one we have it'll set you back just the cameras in that system alone, about 140,000 euros. And then the computer to run it, all of that stuff, we're probably looking at another 20 grand for that. So about 160 grand. And here's the stupid thing. We paid for it all with airdrops. Last year's, all the airdrop season stuff that came through, that's what paid for that studio.
As in you sold off the airdrops that you received in order to pay for it?
Yeah.
Wow. God, this space is crazy.
There was no way I could have done it otherwise. But ApeCoin and ENS,
it's amazing.
Uni, we just kept all the airdrops, and I just kept putting them in a piggy bank for when I was able to. You wanted to do something like this.
Yeah. And then who is your technical partner? I mean, you obviously understand cameras and you know this stuff, but I'm assuming you have, like, how many people are on your team at this point? I guess is the question.
We just managed to find someone to run that studio, but we need another person. We've got a Unity designer sitting just over there building stuff for us at the moment, and we are slowly building out that team at the moment. But it's quite difficult because Unity devs are in high demand, Unreal Engine devs are in high demand. It's just you can see that it's a growth industry. It's kind of almost becoming like smart contract devs now. It's quite difficult to find the people you need. But
why did you choose? I have this understanding, and maybe I'm a little bit erroneous in this, that Unity and Unreal are essentially direct competitors. Now, I think there is interoperability sort of between them but is that true? And why did you choose Unity?
Well, we're using both. So Unreal Engine has taken the headlines for having this very kind of, it's sort of magical technology that allows light to bounce around a scene and make it look really realistic, but at the speed and the pace required to run a video game. It's not like that doesn't exist already in high-end 3D animation programs, because it does, and like some of the renderers out there are absolutely incredible. But the overhead, just in terms of machine processing time, is
wasn't
insane.
Accessible to your everyday
and Unreal does some magic with Lumen to allow it to do that. It can also just take an enormous number of polygons to make rich, detailed textures just appear in real time. So all of these real-time technologies, like just reflections, the way light bounces from one thing to another, it's really incredible. It looks amazing. So the ability to have that is why Unreal has been so widely touted and why it's been used in The Mandalorian, kind of things like that, because it's just really, really good. And it does it in real time as well. So it means that you can just add it in as a tool to what you're doing. Unity, on the other hand, is also really amazing. It's like really super easy to build in Unity. It's really easy to bring objects in. Also, the cinematic capabilities of Unity are pretty damn good. And they are busy buying up a lot of technologies to help them compete with Unreal. And it's not like they're the only game engines in town. Like Improbable is building the other side on its own specific game engine, its own networking tech. But
I thought Improbable used Unity. It doesn't?
It's a little bit custom.
Yeah,
kind of,
it's a mix and match of various.
Yeah, exactly. So there's all sorts of things going on there. But essentially, we kind of need to use both, because a lot of the... If you're thinking about Metaverse actions, kind of things for people to do, you want them to be experienceable through a web browser. And on the whole, Unity seems to be a better bet for kind of reducing file sizes and optimizing for mobile, optimizing for web browsers, that kind of thing. Because if people have to download a game from Steam and then load it on their computer, you're just adding friction. You want people to be able to just jump in through a web browser and join you without there being too much friction there. So Unity, basically.
Amazing. I think that covers everything I like absolutely wanted to cover. I'm looking here. I mean, there's plenty more I'm sure we could talk about. Is there anything you feel like you didn't get to touch on that you want to make sure we get out here? I mean, we did talk about storytelling, NFTs, and that meta, which I think you'd probably have a hilarious take on.
I'm on the fence about so-called storytelling NFTs. I just don't think anybody understands what storytelling is.
So it feels to me like the utility thing. Like we just like every so often need to come up with like a new way to be like, this is why this has value, or this is why this is important. And it very quickly loses all meaning. Utility, I feel like, lost all meaning. Storytelling in this context will lose all meaning. I do think there are projects that are interweaving very interesting storytelling elements to their projects.
Yeah.
But it's just become like another word.
Yeah, there's one project, MV3, which is kind of a massive world with a huge story. And the writer behind it, Jessie Nixon Lopez, is a real TV writer and has been up through that system. I had a great chat with her when we were still at Defiant. She understands what story is. But it's rare. It's just this kind of thing. And like you'll see influencers write about, it's all about the story. Okay, explain story. What is it? What is it? Go on, Carly, what is it?
Yeah. Hey, I'm not touting it. I'm kind of with you. I think
yes.
It is funny how people think they're an expert in all sorts of things. Once they have to kind of weave in other elements to NFTs, it's like, again, I suddenly we can all build the next Disney, and it's like, oh well, I think there's gonna be a lot of roadblocks.
No. Oh yeah, we're gonna be the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but for NFTs, it's like okay. And how are you going to do that exactly?
Hats off to you. Godspeed.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. SuperMassive. Thank you so much. Anything else? I guess I didn't fully let you answer that question. Anything else you want to touch on before we sign off here?
Oh no, not at all. Just literally just to say that we've spent a lot of time. Like both you and I have had this incredible opportunity to speak to founders, to unpack NFT projects, and it sits there deep in my gut, all of those conversations when it comes to our own project and how we're going to try and do our own version of it. And we know that there'll be FUD that comes in, there'll be things that we don't get right, but fundamentally we do respect that community and what's there. And I hope that what we've come up with, particularly like making sure the art is good, that we set a certain standard for all of these things. And like,
when
really
you have a very clear why, which I think was at the height of the bull, the problem was you had arguably the majority of projects launching without a why. Yeah. Right? Like the why was I want to run IP and make a lot of money, and that's we're past the phase where that can really fly, I think, for the most part. Yeah. And you could not be further from that. No,
totally. It's about the 9%, the super fans. It's about giving them the impetus to go and help us make videos go viral. Because if they go viral, then we all win. And that's really kind of the heart of it. And how we all win, can't say. But stay tuned.
And the point you made, I think this is you are not an NFT company, right? You are a company with a why outside of just NFTs, and you are integrating NFTs for the reasons that they should be integrated to something.
Oh yeah,
and like that's the key.
And the best thing is that, you know, the NFT communities, they need feeding.
Yeah.
They're just like, what's today? Give me stuff. Otherwise, I'm gonna go and buy another one on Magic Eden and kind of give me stuff. The good thing for us is that I keep doing
every
that.
time, you know, yeah.
Every time. The good thing about it, we always have new content coming out. So like every 2 weeks we're gonna have tempos, but in between we're gonna have a smaller video that kind of fills in the gap. But we're also gonna have YouTube Shorts. We're gonna have stuff coming out constantly, so that people can be fed. And they will always have a new part of the story to latch onto, so they won't get bored. And if they are getting bored, then hopefully they'll let us know and we go, okay, yeah, we'll change some stuff. But, you know, always looking to bring that community into the story so they can be part of it, so they can be in the world, they can be part of a game show, they can be deciding what happens. They're very integral to our first big film and what that's going to be about. And that's really a test, is like, can that model work? Can our community come together and do something meaningful? And inflict pain on me. That's actually the real kind of crux of that one. It's like, the worse it is for me, the better it is for everybody else. So, you know, fun times.
And you have dropped some Easter eggs here in this conversation and on your Twitter as to what that
I have
will look like.
I have.
We'll see if folks pick up on it.
I ran 84 kilometers last week in 5 days. That's sort of a clue.
That's a big clue. Cool. Well, awesome. SuperMassive. This was great. We will, I'm sure, have you on again, and just cannot wait to see what you start coming out with. I think all of this crystallizes when people see actual content. You know, like, you sort of can talk in hypotheticals, but then it's like, I think as you guys get deeper into this and really start putting stuff out, I think people will see it even more. So I can't wait for that.
No, I appreciate it. Always fun talking to you.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of Overpriced JPEGs. If you liked this conversation, if you liked this episode, please go ahead and hit subscribe. It helps me out, it helps the show out, and it means you will get alerts and updates when we post new content. Thanks again.